Okay, here we go. Just about, yeah, all right. So I'll keep watching the waiting room. I'll also be watching the chat. If you have a question, probably the best thing to do is going to be to unmute yourself and ask that way. I'm going to go ahead and mute you all now. If you need to thoroughly unmute yourself, you can always press the space bar and hold it while you're talking. You can also press the button that has a little microphone. Either way is just fine. So welcome to this informational meeting. I will keep this under 40 minutes because Zoom will kick us off after 40 minutes. If that happens before I finish, click on the link again. I'm being a little stingy this year with my Zoom account. But welcome, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming and supporting your child. It means a lot that you're here. And if no one has told you recently, bless you for being a parent. Bless you for the hard work you do with kids and raising your kids. Because I see them for 8 hours a day and they're wonderful for 8 hours a day. I can't imagine the work that you put in behind the scenes. So thank you in advance for all of that. Now, here we go. I'm gonna share my screen. This is the primary thing we're going over today. It's the handbook. This is available on my website. So this is available on my teacher web page. It is also on Canvas, but it's harder to find on Canvas. So on my teacher web page, which give me a thumbs up if you can see that web page. Awesome, thank you. This is right under forms and information, my teacher that thing in the page that I made up on the web, right? Good, so we're going back here. This is fall 2020 only. When we get to December, I'll send out something new because we really don't know anything past about November, if I'm honest. Thank you for being here. You've already met a ton of expectations, so awesome. There is a choir fee. We don't know when we'll be allowed to charge it. I'll let you know. I'll send out multiple emails and walk you through how to pay it when that happens. The reason we charge a choir fee is that the school district gives us a certain budget. That usually doesn't cover things like when we purchase music or when we purchase accompaniment tracks or when we pay an accompanist or when we, on a normal year, go on trips and things like that. It doesn't cover a whole lot of things. And it has to be allocated just so. When we do the general choir fee, that pays for your t-shirts, that pays for any music we buy, that pays for any supplies we buy. And a lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of it your child actually gets to keep, not the music, almost everything else, and not the accompanist either. But yeah, so they'll keep most of that stuff. I'm seeing smiles and it's so great. I perform for an audience, that's me. All right. The general expectations are pretty basic and there's nothing in here that's super surprising. It's all conduct kind of things. They're gonna wear a mask at all times. This is already an expectation everywhere else. I will give them a few warnings before I just completely send them out of class, but that's one of the things I'm gonna give the fewest warnings on. So just be aware of that. They will get to take a water break every day when they come in. You'll see this thing about backpacks and water and things like that. They'll get to take a water break. I've been really bad about that so far, but I will not be as bad about it in the future, so they can bring their water bottle with them. They will also need to bring, as far as required materials, they'll need to bring their choir binder every day to choir. That's part of their materials grade. So they get, I think, yeah, it's 15 points a week out of their 100 total points comes from bringing their materials. That's their choir binder, any music inside, and their pencil. This year, I'm asking that they also bring their device, not because we're going to use them all the time in choir, but because we never know when a teacher is going to be told to go home because they're coughing and that might be COVID. And in that instance, you know, it's such short notice, they may or may not have a sub. And if they have a sub, all of the sub plans are online. So it's just better if they bring them all the time in case something like that happens. We'll keep them in safe places though. Obviously no food or drinks. I have carpet in my room. That's really the only reason we have no food or drinks. We had an ant colony. Don't want to repeat that. Okay, under certain conditions, we're going to be outside. Now, I will not take your child outside while they're mowing. I'm not going to have them stand in the grass and get eaten by fire ants. I'm also going to make sure that it's under 90 degrees and that they get extra water breaks during that time. They will be hopefully in the shade as much as possible. They will be on concrete, so it would be mostly shaded concrete. They would get extra water and things like that during that. The reason we would do that is when choir classes are over about 8 to 9 people, we cannot safely socially distance in the choir room. There are just too many people, can't do that. But the most recent studies from Colorado State University over the summer break, when they started studying aerosol movement in typical school classrooms, said that it would not be safe to hold class and sing if you can't socially distance and wear a mask. So what we'll do normally is we can sing for about 30 minutes and then we need to allow for a certain number of air changes to happen before it's safe for us to sing again. Otherwise, we get all sorts of particulate matter in the air and we don't know how much we could be spreading the virus, okay? If there's, if someone has it in the room. So we need to add in time where we're not singing. Now, if we're over a certain number of people, we move outside because there's really not a safe way to do it inside if we can't distance. There's too much being put out. When you sing, your voice is projected, your air is projected farther into the room, and air, you're giving out more air. So think of like an entire normal sized classroom, but everybody's talking at once. And they're talking loudly. That's how much air is coming out, and that's how much spit is coming out, and that's how much of all of that is coming out all at the same time. So we're thinking through the logistics of this. Just know that sometimes we'll be outside. I'll give you warning in advance. I'll give you at least a day of warning in advance when we do that, so they don't come to school in a parka or something like that. Kid with a parka these days would be pretty fly. Okay. They will keep a choir binder. In-person and online students need to keep a choir binder. Online students, because if they ever transition into, 2 reasons, if they ever transition into in-person choir, it's going to make that transition so much smoother. Second, because we do evaluate, part of their evaluations each 9 weeks, at least one time in the 9 weeks, they do have a binder check. And the reason we do binder checks is not just, oh, we need another grade. It's to reinforce in them like some sort of structure in how they're thinking about the music that they have in their life, okay? So it's not just shoved in the bottom of a backpack. It's not just thrown somewhere in their bedroom. It's their textbook. So we teach them how to take care of their textbook. And then it's also most of what we're working on in class is in that binder. And there's some things that you just have to do physically that you can't do online. And that's where those folders come in handy. I will not usually touch their folders for obvious reasons, but they need to be able to show me what they've got going on. So this week, if your child hasn't been to school in person yet, we're making their binders. Please send them with 5 dividers, about 30 sheets of notebook paper, 5 sharpened pencils, a highlighter, flat 3-ring pencil bag that can be kept in the binder. If your child has been, and you might touch base with them and see if they were able to make their binder. They need to bring that with them every day to class, and it needs to be made by next week. We spent a lot of time making them in class this week. There's a video on Canvas of how to make those. If they're an online student, they should follow the video. It's exactly what we would do in class. But folder checks are a thing. So is the cost of music. So I mentioned before that we use that extra $20 to buy the music. That music does stay with the school. So sometimes that does come out of the original budget. Sometimes that does come out of the extra $20. But anytime it's marked with anything other than pencil or highlighter, if I've given them permission to highlight, which is very rare, but it does happen, it is considered destroyed and you might need to cover the cost for that. Okay, new this year. They're bringing their binder with them every year. If you had a child in my program in the last 3 years, that was not the case. And in fact, I would discourage that. But it will be necessary at some point or another for them to practice at home with their binder. Please make sure they have their binder every day. Or, you know, just make it on them. Well, you didn't have your binder today. It looks like you missed your points there. Only use erasable pencil to write in their music, except when I specifically give them instructions to use highlighter. Moving on. This is how I'll communicate with your child and with you if they're not meeting expectations for behavior in my class. This is mainly for in-person people, but if I'm having digital conduct issues with them, you will definitely hear after one warning. You will hear from me after one warning if it's a digital issue. Yes, there we go. Moving on. This is an extra little section that will apply if for some miraculous reason we can travel before the end of the year, but you can read that if you'd like on your own. Online expectations are pretty basic and they're just about the same as everywhere else, but just to go quickly, they will need to, and I see the chat blinking, I will stop there real quick. Okay, goodbye, Miss Nichols. All right, students will need to access a device that has a microphone that can record their responses. They will also need to listen to a track on headphones while they make their recordings. This is for when we do performance evaluations, and I'll explain what that is in a moment. They will need to be able to record their voices and give me a recording of those things. Only need a camera to record themselves about 4 times this year. And it's got to be a camera with sound, obviously, but they're only going to need that when we do performance evaluations. We'll go over that in just a second. But the audio recording is going to be especially important. Okay, during online meetings, they need to be wearing pants and a shirt at least. Something needs to be covering the top and the bottom. I don't really care what happens other than that, but please wear a shirt. Okay. Extra noise in their environment. If it can be helped, I understand sometimes there are dogs barking and little siblings running around, but especially when they're making their recordings, please try to make that as quiet a surrounding as possible. I'm not going to count off if they have, you know, a couple dog barks or something like that, but if it is becoming a hindrance where I can't hear them on the recording, that's when we're going to start having with actually completing their submission. They should use their real first and last name on any meetings we do. That's if they do a voice lesson. That's if we do a social Zoom after school one day or on the weekends. I need their real first and last name, and part of that is so I can take attendance, but part of that is if what we're doing is graded, it's important for me to be able to go in and see, you know, oh, this person did show up and I saw them and we interacted at this time. It's just easier for me to take attendance that way. I will say, while you're on this call, I do not use Teams. I have a very fraught relationship with Teams, and I would rather not affiliate with it. So this is why we're using Zoom, especially with kids. There are ways that this is safer. There are ways that this is not safer, but I know how to mitigate, right? So don't worry about Teams. It's either going to be Zoom or it's going to be on Canvas or on Microsoft 365. Okay, I don't do Teams. I just don't. Okay. Timely manner of completing things. Please stay muted. These are easy ones, right? If they behave inappropriately, they can be ejected. That affects their grade. This was fun trying to imagine what all they would do. Inappropriate behavior includes, but is not limited to, muting others, using a lewd, violent, or profane background or screen name, putting inappropriate content in the chat, interrupting or talking over others, sharing their screen without permission, using profanity. If we see those in recorded responses or in a Zoom setting, there will be issues with grading. Okay. Online students, here's the big flashing red light. Okay, online students, I need to meet with them, hopefully one-on-one, but it may be 2-on-1 or even 3-on-1, depending on how many voice lesson times are left. Just once this month, just once. And I will what I'll do in those 15 minutes that I have with them, which by the way, I'm going to put that link in the chat here really quick. And I need to hide the video panel. There you go. Okay. Yes, thank you. All right. I'm talking to the computer, not to any one of you, but there it is. Escape. Thank you. Back to the chat. Here is the link to the Sign Up Genius where you can sign up for online lessons, online voice lessons. If your student is an online student, if they're in person, I'm hearing their voice in class. I don't need to see it. I don't need to hear them. I don't need to hear them at all, okay? But if they are an online student, I may never have heard their voice before because I had them, maybe I had them March to May of last year. I may have heard them on their welcome to school recording, but that was their speaking voice. I may have never heard their singing voice before. That's kind of an important thing when I'm teaching choir. So what I'll do is I'll voice them and I'll just have them echo me and do a few different echo type things and check in with them on how their assignments are going and make sure that we have something of a rapport so that when I contact them and say, hey, you're missing this assignment, they don't think I hate them, because I don't. To the parents and guardians, when they're recording something or when they're singing something, you are wonderfully supportive, otherwise you wouldn't be here. Here are some tips for this. Provide them with a quiet environment free of distractions, which we already went through. Offer encouragement and positive feedback when you hear them singing. Here's a big one that I wouldn't have thought of when I first started doing this. Monitor sibling and family responses to students singing. So if your child is making noises that are less than pretty, it's all a work in progress, right? They're learning, they're growing, they're making new sounds and things. They're putting it out there. The worst thing that they could hear from an older brother or older sister or cousin or something like that is, whoa, you suck. Okay. This would not be conducive to a good learning environment. So I know you can't control everything, but just know that that might make them want to stop singing. You would never do this, but please don't tease your student about their singing or allow another member of the household to tease them. Don't draw attention to their singing before they're ready to share. Now is not the time to sign them up to sing the national anthem for an Astros game by themselves, just because they joined choir in 6th grade. Don't, and this is the hard one, offer advice unless they ask. It's like getting dressed in the morning. You don't want someone to tell you, oh, you really gotta wear that. It's the same thing with your voice, right? Yeah. So when they say, oh, I'm so bad at this, or oh, I'm so frustrated, here are some things to say. You can't do it yet, but you're learning. Or ask them, tell them to ask me for help, or you're learning and growing, or I hear these things, or what do you hear that you don't like? Ask them to be analytical about it. It is really easy as a vocalist, as someone whose instrument is within your body, to take everything extremely personally. That has always been the case for singers and probably always will be. But if you can help them shift the idea to, this is something my instrument is doing, and this is not a reflection of me as a person, right? So I'm not a bad person because I sounded bad on that phrase. Yeah, okay. This is the big change. So normally we'd be doing like choir concerts 4 times a year. We can't do that for obvious reasons. 200 people in a room is just not a thing we can do right now. So what we're doing instead is concert evaluations or performance evaluations. And what that's going to look like is your child will come to school on whatever day they come to school. This is at the end of the 9 weeks. They will have worked on music for those 9 weeks, some music or another for those 9 weeks. And they will come in their concert attire. Now, their concert attire is listed at the very top. Is their choir shirt, a pair of blue jeans that are school appropriate, and closed-toed shoes. That's it. So really the only thing you have to remember is the choir shirt, unless your kid wears khakis all the time, which go you, but it's not in the uniform. So we're going to treat this as much like a concert as possible. So that's part of it, is, are you dressed in the right uniform? they're going to come and they will sing through cuts of their music or through their entire concert, depending on how much music we've worked on. I'll be walking around and evaluating, and all I'm checking for, it's not necessarily like, oh, she sounds really bad. It's more like, did they make the changes that I asked them to make in class? Are they singing from memory? Are they using good posture? Are they singing expressively? So, you know, does their face look like a zombie, or does it look like they're kind of alive? Something like that, okay? This is not the time where I become Simon Cowell and, you know, kick you out of choir because of how you're sounding and things, right? This is constructive feedback. For online students, what's going to happen is they will submit recordings of themselves singing the same thing as the in-person students, okay? Which means you need some way for them to record themselves. This is a performance-based class, and I don't say that because I've made it a performance-based class. I say it because the TEKs say it's a performance-based class. So we need to perform in some way. They are thus required to participate in all performance evaluations, and they're counted as test grades. They're one of the few major grades I take throughout the year. They will also evaluate themselves after, and I'll take their feedback into account when they're when I'm grading them for things. Okay. All right. If they talk during someone else's performance evaluation, like if I need to split the class because there are 18 in that class, we can't sing with more than 9, and they're talking while the other one's singing, they will lose some points on that. So just know that concert etiquette is one of our TEKs. So taking off points for that is justified. They will be individual in nature based on the performance rubric. So the grades for this will be individual in nature based on the performance rubric at the end of this packet. Give me a couple of weeks after one of these to finish grades, because it does take me a little bit. I do have to go through and write notes and things. So yeah, okay. If it's not possible for some reason for your online student to record themselves doing their performance evaluation, please contact me for an alternative assignment. Now, you can't do that for all of them, but if it's like suddenly, oh, the dog ate my webcam, poor dog. But we have some alternative assignments that can happen if that is the case, okay? If it's one of those temporary kind of things. How would you recover the webcam is what I'm thinking. Okay, grades. Folder checks we already went over. Loving the smiles. I had no cameras on last night. It was so hard. Okay. They have a weekly grading rubric. We have not started this yet because they don't know some of the skills to be able to get a 100 on it yet, so that wouldn't be fair. I'll send out a giant skyward message when we start this grading system. But it's on a weekly basis. It's total 100 points. Here are the TEKs that it's based on. Here are more TEKs that it's based on. And here's the actual rubric for in-person students. So if they do it every day, 4 out of 5 days, 3 out of 5 days, 2 out of 5 days, 1 out of 5 days. And I have a grid that I grade them on while we're in class. So I'm sitting there, and if I'm seeing them with their stuff, like we check for their stuff every day, their materials, then it's a clean column. If I see that they're missing their pencil, then it's 1 mark through a little box. Okay, and then I tally at the end of the week for each of these categories. So materials, posture, which we've already gone over posture, so they're ready for that. After this week, they'll be ready for materials. Hand signs and counting fingers we have not done yet, so that's going to be a couple more weeks before we can do that. Singing cooperatively with others. Okay, this is worth 40 points. You cannot pass choir if you don't sing. You cannot pass choir if you don't sing. Surprise, surprise. But it's 40 points per week, which is 8 points per day. So singing cooperatively with others, I'm sorry to zoom back and forth like this, but if they choose not to sing for part of class, it's 2 points per 10 minutes. Okay. If they're not singing cooperatively, this also, so if they're yell singing or they're singing over the entire group, if they're intentionally butchering the words several times, like intentionally, you know, this is a discipline kind of thing. If they're droning when they're capable of singing, I've had all of these. So you think, who would do that? I've had all of them. If they are not making the changes that we want them to make, so say we've said for the last week to put a big T at the end of this word, and we get there and they put a K every time for whatever reason, to be obnoxious or something, that loses them some points. It wouldn't lose them the full 40, but it would lose them parts of that. So cooperative singing is on pitch at an appropriate volume and incorporates changes made in rehearsal. Of course, I always take into consideration if kids are sick, if something's going on at home, things like that, okay? Writing things into their music is 10 points per week, it's 2 points per day. Participating actively and encouraging an environment of learning, so not being really mean to each other is another 10 points. Okay, if they're absent for a week, they get the full 100. If they are absent for a day, they get their full 20 points for that day. If we have a holiday, they get the full 20 points for that day. It errs in their favor. Here's the same thing, but for, here's the performance evaluation grading rubric. So this is when we do our mock concert kind of thing. And this is just, did they arrive on time? Did they arrive dressed in appropriate concert attire? Did they perform all the choreography? If there is no choreography, they get the full 20 points there for free. Did they sing cooperatively? Same thing. And did they talk or play during someone else's evaluation? If they didn't, they get 20 points. If they talked 2 or 3 times, 10 points off, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. That's part of our concert etiquette grading. And that's the last 2 TEKs that we are accountable for. We always consider circumstances about uniforms. I always keep a few extra shirts in the choir room. So no promises, but there are usually a few extras in there if they forget on that day. All right, and then the daily weekly grading rubric for online students is here. Okay, and it's the same things. Do they have their posture? Now the way we grade this is when they show up for their individual voice lessons. If we haven't gone over a skill before they show up for their voice lesson, they get those points for free. So like we hadn't done the materials thing, so everybody who had a voice lesson on Friday of this last week got those points for free. We had done a posture lesson, so they had to work for those 10 points. And as we add skills, those will add on. Okay. And it's the same thing, counting fingers when reading or rehearsing, making changes as requested, writing in, this is part of their folder check too, but writes requested information in the music and participates actively, etc. So while they're in their lesson or they're participating actively. Okay. Same exact standards. And then for performance evaluations, it's the same, except there's a little bit down here that is about the about the recording. So was the recording made in a quiet place? If the background noise made it a little bit difficult to hear, we got to dock a few points for that. If I really couldn't understand what they were saying or hear them at all, then that docks a few more points. And that's continued down here because formatting has been difficult this year for some reason. Not sure why. Here are the learning objectives. You can peruse through those at your own discretion. And then here's all we know about the calendar for this entire year so far. So you are here. October 20th, and then October 20th is the practice for the performance eval. Then on the 21st, we come back and we reevaluate and we say, okay, what could we have done better? The 22nd is when we actually take that eval. Okay, and it's the same thing. So every time we do a concert, we would do a dress rehearsal, a day in between, and then the actual concert. And that gave us some time to say, okay, what did we not do so well in the practice that we could have done in the actual performance evaluation? And again, all of those happen during class or online if you are an online student, okay? Tentatively spring fundraiser, but we have no idea, if I'm honest. We just have no idea. I'll try to announce things around November. Can't promise anything. At this point, here's what I'm going to show you though. Going to hide the video panel so I can, oops, nope, not that. Show video panel, hide floating meeting controls. There we are. Okay, we're going to go over to Microsoft Forms. And I'm going to move you over here. Good. All right. Here is a QR code for the handbook consent form. You may have already done this, but if you didn't, it's about 11 questions, and it's just saying that you heard this meeting and you've read what you need to of the handbook. You have no questions. If you have no questions, you can go ahead and scan the QR code and fill out those, and then you're good to go. I've said everything I need to say. If you do have questions, that's wonderful, and you could put them in the chat. I'm also going to put this link in the chat, and then I'll go back to the QR code here. Let me see. Oh no, it went away. Where is it? I'll just put it in the chat. Okay, this is to the consent form. Now, Zoom is going to kick us off in about 4 minutes. So if you have any questions, you can either unmute and ask, or you can put it in the chat. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't get the QR code.
I'm sorry?
I did not get the QR code.
Oh, okay. So could you access the chat? I put the link in the chat as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I have to call. Come on.
I'm sorry. The handbook consent is really important, if for no other reason than it gives your child's shirt size. So if you would, make sure that they want a shirt. It is part of their choir uniform.
I had a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
For the online students, the dates will be the same for the practice performance evals and the performance eval. Okay, perfect.
Yes. Although I will go ahead and say that their practice eval, I will not be able to evaluate them as fast as they submit. So they may or may not get some feedback back from me just because of the sheer number of students I would have to go through,
Okay.
yeah, physical constraints.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know what? I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
The students who are working remotely, when do they need to start going synchronous with you? Is it towards the end of the month?
They don't.
It won't even,
No.
okay. Okay.
Yep. And that's because every choir class is a mixture of teams. So yeah, so they would,
Okay.
yeah, they would never be able to meet at the same time.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Okay, Zoom is about to kick us out, so do make sure you've done the Microsoft Office handbook consent form here. Just click on that link in the chat. And other than that, you're totally fine. It's been wonderful meeting some of you. And seeing your faces and seeing your names on the Zoom thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What?
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wilkins, did you have a question?
I'm trying to find the link. I'm sitting in the car outside.
It is challenging. Yeah, on mobile, it's difficult to find the.
And I'm horrible at this. I'm trying. I was